Righty guys, let's hit Inscription head on. Let's see if we can get this done in one go. I think I've got everything planned out. I think I've got all of the materials I need. Hopefully, you can see over there in the bags, I've got a whole bunch of herbs that, fingers crossed, is going to be more than plenty for us to level up Inscription. I would rather try and get a system where it's leveled up at a cost-effective method rather than just using what I've got, but we'll have to see. So first of all, let's start by just milling some of these herbs up, because you do actually get skill points, I believe, for milling. Although that's interesting, they've changed that. We're not actually getting skill points for milling at all. The last time I leveled this up, I think we got like maybe 20 points or something, so this shows that even on the beta things do change. But let's get enough to craft at least some of the inks. We're going to need a whole bunch of these to start with, so let's just go all the way to 10. We'll get our first plan. I think you doing the inks, if you grey out the inks, is a sensible way to level to begin with, because let's be honest, you are always going to need those inks. Writ of Grave Robbing is the first thing we pick up. This is your lockpicking for Inscription. Still going to bang through a load of the inks though, there's no reason not to. Use the inks as much as we can. It may be a case of that these go... these have gone yellow already. See how far we can push these. Like I said, we are going to use them, so mill up a bunch of herbs still. And you guys see the... down here you can just about see what we're getting. Maybe if I make the text on this a little bigger. Make the window a bit larger, it might be easier for you guys to see. You'll see the skill points and what have you. So I think we'll probably get to 20, maybe 25 just by creating the first inks. You get the Tome Skill of the Mind at 15, Newly Departed Codex at 20. But if we can get skill points for making inks, we'll do it. So, 25. The inks have gone grey at 25. So now we can start picking up some other things and arguably having to actually make things. This is the first point. So we're a quarter of the way through without actually technically making anything. So now we've got a few options available to us. Tome of the Skill Mind, Talent Adjustment, 3 inks, 6 inks, a couple of parchments. Parchments are from vendors. Or 1 ink, and 1 ink. That's not a bad one, that's considerably cheaper. That's only 2 inks instead of 6, so even though it doesn't guarantee the skill point, we would have to, as long as we get a skill point 1 every 3 times, we're still good. The staves are kind of cool items to craft. That you'll probably sell these quite nicely, but they are very hefty in terms of ink cost, 18 and 15 inks accordingly. But they do give 2 skill points, or 20 inks for 2 skill points. So we are going to go with these ones, the Writ of the Grave Robbing. See if we can get lucky with the... we've got to get to 30 before we get the ability to mass mill, and that's when we'll start making our herbs, making the inks again. Okay, so we actually got to 30 off just creating 5 of those, which was nice. Now we can do all the mass milling for days. Now, the argument here is that you are going to need the inks anyway, eventually. Now, mass milling Death Blossom is going to be the probably the most cost-effective way to get hold of your inks. Death Blossom is the basic herb in Shadowlands. You're going to get access to a whole bunch of it. As and when you level, you can pick up Death Blossom in any zone. There's strong reason to believe that this is going to be the cheapest herb, and by some way, just because of its availability. So when it comes to mass milling, every time we hit this button, it's going to take 20 Death Blossoms. So we want to keep the cost down as much as possible. But of course, we're going to use the ink, so it's not necessarily a cost to us. So I'm quite happy to press this button a few times, do some mass milling, get a bunch of pigments on the go. That should get us some levels at least. Now I'm likely to want to continue mass milling until this goes at least green. I might even want to push this all the way to grey, as like I said, we're going to use the inks anyway. We've picked up all of the missives, so for those of you out there that are looking to level Inscription simply for the sales benefits and the gold potential that can be made from missives, you pick them up at 40, and the only requirement that's going to be out of your reach so far is the Tranquil Ink. Tranquil Ink comes from Tranquil Pigment, which is the rare pigment that, as you can see, it is possible for it to drop from milling Death Blossom, but at a very, very low chance. To acquire these in large quantities, you're going to have to be milling Nightshade, which is the Shadowlands version of Anchorweed. Is likely, at least at the beginning, to be very expensive, but in high demand, because it's also used not just for the missives, but it's also used for the Darkmoon cards. Now at this point we can either continue to mass mill, which is looking very favourable because it arguably doesn't really cost us anything because we're going to use the inks anyway, or you could choose to start trying to make some gold by making these missives. We're going to get skill points for the Tranquil Inks, although we can only make a couple of them based on our milling results so far. But I'm going to look to continue with the mass milling as far as we can get it, because that's actually probably going to be the cheapest way to level Inscription. 45, still allowing us to keep going with the mass milling. This actually might be a really short guide if it's if we can get very far with this. To use a few stacks of Death Blossom is really not going to be the end of the world, because we'll by the time we make the inks, we'll make the money back off that. It's still orange at 50. We're going to keep going, you know. It's 20 herbs every time we press the button. But Death Blossom will be the cheapest herb. Now it's gone yellow. Now we might want to change our plan a little bit. We might want to look at some alternative ways to skill up now. Missives are going to take 8, basically 10 basic inks of varying numbers, but 1 Tranquil Ink. We can get points for the Tranquil Ink. I'm going to push Death Blossom to green. I think it's still the most cost-effective way. 20 Death Blossom is probably going to be cheaper than just a single Nightshade, due to the rarity of them. So, well, I think we're still good to get this to maybe at least 60. Let's keep going. Obviously, in terms of quantity of herbs, it's difficult to give an exact number because when they're orange, you don't guarantee yourself that skill point. But now we've hit 60. It's got to a point where it's basically saying, right, hang fire on these now. You're not going to get skill points anymore. We really do need to start looking at crafting some other stuff. So our only options by the time we get to here is Tranquil Ink or the Missives. Well, we might as well take use of the Tranquil Inks and make as much of these as we can. If you've been unlucky and have not got any Tranquil Pigment from your mass milling of Death Blossom, you might have to look at switching to milling some Nightshade. I would recommend just milling by hand, 5 at a time, and you'll see you're likely going to get yourself 1 or 2 Tranquil Pigment every time you press the button. We need to get ourselves to 80 before we get the Darkmoon cards. So it's going to be a combination of crafting up these Tranquil Inks. 63, 64, 65. The ink's now gone yellow. We're going to need to get our hands on a few more of them if we can. These missives seem to be holding their skill up points for longer, so we'll mill up a few more Nightshade. See if we can maybe get to at least 70. We've only got ourselves 5 Tranquil Ink, so we're slightly limited to the amount of missives we can make right now anyway. It's obviously going to be from level from skill 60, where the cost of leveling this up is going to increase dramatically. See if we're lucky and we get a skill point for each of these. We may not. No, we got to 69. We're going to have to mill some more Nightshade. 70. Now it's gone green. Now we really do want to sort of push into making the Missives to get those last 10 points to get us the Darkmoon cards. So we're actually missing... I need to very quickly craft up a bunch of the basic inks because we're actually running low on those. Luminous ink, we've only got a few. Umbral ink, we've only got a few. And there's our Tranquil inks as well at the end there. I reckon if we, when it comes to crafting the Missives, you may notice that the Missives themselves use a slightly different number of both Luminous and Umbral ink. But if you craft them all at, if you craft an equal quantity of them all, you will actually balance out the amount of inks that you use. Because the argument should be that the Luminous ink and the Umbral ink are available to you in somewhat equal numbers through milling. So let's make, we want to try and make 2 or 3 of each of these. That will hopefully get us to 80. So interestingly, this is actually meant that we've used very, very little, if any, of the zone specific herbs to level this up. We've simply used Death Blossom for the mass milling, and that has really sort of pushed it so that we don't have to use these zone specific herbs, which will be more expensive. The milling rates for the zone specific herbs are likely to be better though, so it's kind of up to you which way you want to take it. We've made a couple of versatility missives. Make a couple of mastery missives. What do we need for the haste? We need more Umbral ink. $74. We're still guaranteeing skill points. The only likelihood is these might go yellow at 75. Realistically, guys, by the time you hit 80 with Inscription, you are actually basically done. As you may see on the list to the side here, there's not really any reason to get to 100. If you're using Inscription for the purpose of making gold, you get your access to Darkmoon cards at 80, and from there, just by crafting the Darkmoon cards, you'll actually get yourself all the way to 100. Just kind of accidentally through crafting the Darkmoon cards. So although there's 100 skill points you actually need, the argument stands that in reality you only really need to get to 80. So we need some more Luminous inks. I should have crafted a whole bunch of these earlier on. Would have made these last few points a bit quicker, but 76. Make a couple of these. That'll get us to 78, and then hopefully they'll still be orange and we can just pick 2 more to make. Once again, I'm out of herbs. Out of ink, sorry. I wonder how much a missive would be worth early on. Seems quite expensive. The missives are going to be quite expensive because they use the Tranquil Ink. Tranquil Ink comes from your Nightshade. Each Tranquil Ink, it wouldn't surprise me if it's valued at about 500 gold a piece, maybe even more. They're going to be quite expensive early on, simply because I reckon Nightshade is going to be 200, 250 gold. As just getting access to them is more difficult. But the herbalists out there, they're of course they're on foot, they're not able to fly. There's going to be a lot of competition, and so on that basis, the rare version of the herb is going to be quite expensive, I would imagine. But now we've got Darkmoon cards. This is the fun stuff. This is where you want to make sure that you've got a few Tranquil Inks spare to start crafting your Darkmoon cards. But guys, I'm going to leave the guide there because you are literally, for most people, going to stop at 80 and then just focus on Darkmoon cards at death. There are a few reasons to get to 100. When you get your Inscription to 100, you can go and grab access to the Crafter's Mark II, which is going to be somewhat beneficial to you. You need to be ascended, friendly with the ascended to pick up your codex, if that's something that's going to be beneficial to you or your guild. And the contracts, of course, you have to be revered with the respective contract to be able to pick this up. So by the time you've leveled up your scribe, you'll probably have done a few world quests in the different zones and be able to pick up your contracts. So if you're wondering where they were during the leveling process, you've got to... There's quite a bit more rep grinding to do with Inscription than there is with the rest of the professions, simply for the contracts. You're going to need to get revered with all four basic factions in Shadowlands to be able to get access to everything. So good luck on that, happy grinding. But I hope that guide was helpful to you guys. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Give the video a thumbs up if it's helpful for you. Good luck with your Shadowlands gold making using Inscription. I've been Manthius, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.